everyone, this is Janat Kamal और आप देख रहे हैं हिंदुस्तान. In a country as big as Hindustan, government alone cannot cater the educational needs of the population. No wonder the private sector is playing its part to the extent it can. Akanksha Foundation is one such organization in development sector led by an exceptional and accepted leader, Vandana Goyal. She is with us today on board. Thank you so much, Vandana, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
हमारे साथ कॉल पे मौजूद है मिस वंदना गोयल. वंदना, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर joining us. Vandana, what is the main issue and hurdle in the way of universal education?
I think in any developing country, there are so many basic issues that need to be addressed for the majority of the population. Basic things like water, infrastructure, jobs, that things like education, especially quality of education, usually get neglected or they get deprioritized in order to make sure that people have food, that they have a roof over their head, that they have water to drink. Now, as India develops and the average income level increases and people's aspirations also increase for themselves, the demand for quality education, not just universal education, but quality education has increased with that. Giving the government a big challenge in terms of how to address a growing populations, growing aspirations through their system of education.
Okay, so Vandana, education for the poor, what is the gap? What is the gap between the government services and demand? How are the NGO and private sector bridging this gap?
So currently, we've seen a trend in India where because of the declining quality of government schools and because of rising incomes, many families were choosing to send, who could afford even small fees, were choosing to send their children to low-fee private schools. This is a phenomenon happening across the developing world. So now their estimates are sometimes as high as 40% of poor children are actually attending private schools instead of government schools in some cities and states across India.
So why is this so? Why are parents preferring private schools instead of government schools?
So really, it's a matter of quality. So especially because with rising aspirations, parents want their children to go to college. They want their children to be in skilled jobs. They understand that English is also an important skill for them to have in this country in order to access those opportunities. And so they send their kids to private schools, believing that those private schools will deliver better on their quality of education available to them. And now that they have higher incomes, they can afford also to pay fees. So the government has a challenge now to improve the quality of education that they are providing in order to bring families back into their systems. And the government is doing many things today in order to do that.
So in what time period do you see government improving on their education system?
In the 12 years that I've worked in education in India, I've seen big shifts in the government in terms of their both prioritizing education as well as the resources that they're committing to improving education, as well as their openness to partnering with NGOs and private institutions in order to improve that quality when they recognize that we alone as a government cannot do this. So we see pockets of this happening across the country. It's happening in Delhi, in Rajasthan, in Himachal Pradesh, in Tamil Nadu. Many states are now making education a priority, seeing that people really are seeing this as a political priority now for them as well. And so we see many public-private partnerships happening across the country in service of that. But until the government schools actually improve, we will not see a big change in how many students are attending government schools, so long as parents have a choice.
So Vandana, what is the future of Hindustan's children and the youth?
So right now there is a struggle, I would say, in the aspirations, or there's a gap in the aspirations of our youth and what our country is able to deliver for them. They are not often in high quality schools or do not have access to high quality colleges, but yet their aspiration level is very high for what they want to achieve. With social media and exposure increasing, they see what kind of lives other people are living They aspire to have those things for themselves, and yet they don't have the support systems in society to achieve those.
Okay,
Which
Vandana,
can
we will continue from here. We'll take a short break here. Stay with us. So, Vandana, as you were saying before we went to the break, that the children, the youth do not have an access to the high grade colleges. So, what do you think? Why is this lack of access?
So they have access to school, they have access to college in India. Access is not the issue anymore. So 97% almost universal primary enrollment in school. But as you go along through secondary school, through college, that number falls because the quality decreases. So really the issue I would say that we're facing today is one of quality and not access anymore. And so when we're talking about access to high quality, what does it take? We need better teachers at all levels. We need more accountability in our systems. We need curriculum that's relevant. We need schools and colleges to be giving students and young people the skills they need to function in today's world. You and I are today speaking across countries over Skype.
Yes.
So how do you actually use those tools to be productive, to contribute to your city, to your country? And so young people aspire to do those things and they don't know how. And our schools and our colleges are not delivering that for them. And yet there are a lot of things that are happening from everyone's side to improve that state today. And yet it'll take time.
So, Vandana, the education is changing from its traditional classroom rules to an interactive session. So, how do you see Hindustan making that transition?
So there's a few big movements that are happening in the country, both from the government side as well as from civil society, to actually equip schools not just with the hardware, so not just with computers and with internet, but also with the software. To actually access the best quality curriculum and programs that any child, say, living in urban India would have access to. In the last year, we've seen the government of India partner with Ekstep. They started a national teacher platform called Diksha that they're offering to any state who wants to use that, which means that each of our textbooks then has a QR code that students can scan or teachers can scan when they do not know how to teach a concept. Then there are teachers' tools available to them to help them teach that concept to their students. So we see Khan Academy, there's a foundation called Central Square Foundation partnering with Khan Academy to offer their videos in Hindi and in other vernacular languages so that students across India have access to those resources. So we do see that there's big movements in education technology in making sure that this quality gap that you and I have discussed actually gets addressed faster, because improvements in getting many more teachers, many more skilled teachers in the system takes time. But technology can leap some of those obstacles as well.
Okay, so Vandana, the literacy rate of Hindustan is 74.04%, and the gap is so huge. What value proposition the public-private partnership can bring to this?
So government obviously has access to scale. So any organization that is looking at providing quality, the first thing we think about is what can we offer the government in terms of our intellectual ability, intellectual property. So we see now many governments reaching out to NGOs, reaching out to private sector institutions to say that we want to make early education a priority. We want to make 0 to 3 education a priority, but give us the tools for how. And so literacy, I think, is just a very early step in quality, and probably a more easy, challenge to tackle. Now that governments really are acknowledging the issues that exist and want to address them. So if we can partner together, and that's what's happening now across the country, is real deep partnerships, bringing the scale and the resources that government has and the technical ability that the private partnerships bring to the table.
Okay, so Vandana, we will be talking about more. We will be talking more about the current government just after a short break. So, Vandana, the current government is moving away from social sector to infrastructure, energy, and others for votes. How does an educational need fit in the current political model?
So the important thing to understand about education in India is that it is largely a state subject. And in large municipalities like Mumbai, it is largely a municipality subject, where the control for the system of education actually lies in their hands. And we are seeing across the country that both city and state governments are taking many steps to actually improve the quality of education that is being offered in their government schools. One, to bring students back into their schools from the private system, and two, to actually ensure that students are learning and learning well. And so we see these kinds of partnerships happening. Ek Step is just one of those. The Delhi government, run by the Aam Aadmi Party, is doing a lot of education, was one of their biggest principles as their platform. They improved the infrastructure of Delhi schools. They introduced a happiness curriculum, an entrepreneurship curriculum. So there are movements that are happening in pockets across the country, and they're influencing each other, influencing other states and cities to adopt similar practices as this movement builds.
The education is a powerful instrument for bringing about a social change. So, can your
Yes.
system justify it? Like, is education actually bringing up a social change?
So I think that's where the technical abilities of the private sector, of civil society, actually come in, because until the time that we keep offering the same traditional form of education, where we rote learn, where we take exams, education then is not a tool for social change. It's a tool for passing exams and for existing in a system that's now passed. And this is where we are trying to introduce more relevant curriculum into the schools, where we're trying to introduce more innovative teaching practices, innovative programming, so that students develop the critical thinking ability, they develop the passion for society in their schools, to then change, their country, their community, when they leave them. And that is one of the biggest challenges, because when you're facing something from everything from literacy being a challenge to, the highest level of education being a tool for social change being a challenge, where do you begin and where do you prioritize? Which is where I think Delhi is also a very interesting example of how they're prioritizing that, even in the government schools, through their happiness curriculum, through their entrepreneurship curriculum, and seeing that it's not just about literacy anymore. In fact, these skills are as essential as literacy to succeed in today's world.
So, Vandana, the quality of education is a big challenge. So, what is the solution that you suggest?
I think that there's never one solution to complex problems, as with many other sectors. There's one whole issue of how are we equipping our teachers with the tools that they need? How are we making teachers respected? How is it aspirational to become a teacher, where they feel like they are also growing and learning in their profession? Second, how do we introduce accountability into the system through different types of exams, not just board exams, not just exams assessing one form of intelligence? How do we introduce things like you mentioned, where we think about education not just as literacy and numeracy, but as a tool for social change, and where our curriculum reflects that? How do we involve parents and communities in their children's education, especially for the poor? So we've seen that at our work at the Akanksha Foundation in Mumbai, that our partnership with our parents and in the slum communities that we work in has had tremendous impact on our children's learning levels and long-term results.
So, Vandana, just ending the show, where do you see Hindustan in terms of education in 2025?
So I think that if the country continues on the trajectory that we are, I hope that we see a country where young people's aspirations are actually being matched by the quality of services, the quality of education, the quality of skills training that we're able to provide to those young people who have that desire to succeed. And I believe that if we continue to invest in these partnerships, if we continue to make this a political priority, an economic priority, then we will get there.
Thank you so much, Vandana, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
आज के लिए इतना ही. देखते रहिए dbtv.live पे हिंदुस्तान.